All right, hello and welcome to today's video where I'm going to be talking about when, where, why, and how to let ourselves go dark on this path of life. So this is something that I feel like I've been talking about, obviously, for pretty much my entire time as doing whatever it is that I'm doing here. And back in 2014, 15, 16, when I first started all of this perception trainer stuff, I was really trying to communicate much of the time that our negative emotions and our negative feelings and the things that we're upset about and our internal worlds that are not positive, we're not ego, we're not something bad and wrong about us, we're not something we have to get rid of, we're not something that are immature or terrible or ego or whatever it is, and that these things are things that we should actually embrace and that they contain wisdom and that they're helping us. And for so long in the spirituality and self-help movement, I was told over and over and over again that I was just immature and that I was letting my ego take over and that it was just like not right and not spiritual and not good and not mature to ever let myself be upset about something or to not look for the benefit in whatever I was going through, or to not rush to forgive and understand why people had hurt me or what they had done, or to just not try to like spiritualize everything and get to this enlightenment state where I could see the benefit of all things and I could see how it was all helping me and it was all the best ever and I could just have kindness for everybody. And especially that, like being able to just like love everyone unconditionally, in the sense that you let everyone be in your life and you let everyone treat you however they're going to treat you, and you just look for the positive and the benefit in them, and then stop believing that people can hurt you and stop believing that anything negative exists, essentially. And like I say, I was told over and over and over again that not doing that not rushing to this quote unquote, I'm gonna quote unquote, spiritual state where you can see the benefit of everything, where you can see the innocence in everyone, where you can love everyone unconditionally and you never have to put up a boundary and you never have to say no and you never have to be upset and you never have to anything, because you see everything with love and compassion and you've risen above everything. That if you're not doing that you're immature and that you're spiritually immature. And now that I'm thinking about it, in preparation for this talk, I was like, and then you're bad? Like, I'm not even 100% sure what the people who were telling me that were afraid was going to happen if we did embrace our negative emotions, if we did get upset, if we did say, no, that person is an asshole and I don't want them in my life, or whatever it was. Like, if we didn't rise to the spiritual, this is what we're supposed to be and this is what we're supposed to do, we're supposed to be in this transcended state all the time. I'm not 100% sure what the fear was, that if you don't do those spiritual things, what you're going to have instead. Like, that you would just be a negative person that nobody likes and everybody hates and you're just upset and miserable forever. Like, that could be it. Or you fail spiritually and then you're not a spiritual person and then that's bad for some reason. Like, I'm not totally sure what we were afraid was going to happen. But like I say, it was just like over and over and over again, it was just told to me that no, like, negative emotions don't have any wisdom. That's all immaturity, and that we need to rise above and we need to have compassion for everyone. We need to see the good in everyone, and we have to see the benefit in everything that we've been through. And if we don't, we're doing the wrong thing. And I am someone that, again, I am just like a big feeler. I have a lot of emotions, and I'm not good at denying or repressing or pretending that my emotions don't exist. And I've always been that way. And so I know that in our world, and I know that not everyone is like that, right? Like, a lot of people are very good at numbing their emotions, and they're very good at not feeling what they're feeling, and they can use tools in the spirituality and the self-help and the self-improvement world to help themselves just not feel what they're feeling, and to feel like they're transcending the hurt and the pain and the struggle that they've been through with nervous system stimulating stuff, or with talking to themselves enough in their head to convince themselves that they're not feeling what they're feeling and that it's fine. I was just never one of these people who was able to do that. So again, I, for a while, attempted to, I'm not sure that I really attempted it, to be honest. Like, I consider myself a pretty positive person, and someone who has always lived my life assuming that things can get better, and that we can make a difference, and that we can make forward progress, and that we can improve life, and that life can get better. And that's definitely been my kind of mantra for my entire life, because I needed to believe that, because life was really shitty for me for a long time. However, I, like I say, am not good at denying what actually is existing right now in this moment. And I feel like in a lot of ways, the spirituality world and the self-help world and the personal growth world sometimes conflates being positive and having an outlook that things can get better and that things can improve, and that life isn't horrible, and that we can have, like I say, a positive outlook in life and hope, and that we can have compassion, and that we can have understanding for people, and we can have all of these really amazing, beautiful things. And they sometimes conflate that with pretending that the reality that actually exists doesn't exist. I think a lot of the time we get in this muddy water of, we believe on some level that if we really look at reality for how it actually is, if we embrace what's actually happening and the outcomes that are actually happening from what's happening, we think that means that then we are admitting that life can never get better, that nothing can ever be good, that everything is horrible and everything's going to be horrible forever. And so the only option is to be toxically positive, where we just assume everything is great and everything is fine, and we deny our negative emotions, and we deny our pain, and we deny anything that's happening in our current reality that might actually be painful, and that might be degrading, and that might be something that we do need to address, because we just think, I'm either going to be positive and have a good life and be spiritual, and therefore everything is already great and everything is already fine, and I just have to figure out how that is true. Or I'm looking at what's harmful, and I'm looking at what's painful, and I'm looking at how life sucks, and then that means I'm just going to get lost in it and be stuck in it forever because I can't actually change it. And I think that that's really what's happening when we hear people say, like, never address your negative emotions, always look for the benefit, always look for the positive, always look for how this is helping you, never get upset about what is I think what's under that a lot of the time is this fear that if we acknowledge that things are as bad as they are, or as painful as they are, or as dysfunctional or toxic or whatever it is, that means that we're going to be stuck in it, and that means we can't change it, and that means we're never going to be okay again. And so what I want to talk about today is how the reality is, when we are willing to look at reality for how it actually is, when we are willing to look at the people who are harming us, and we're willing to say, no, this is the harm, and this is how it is harming, and this is why it hurts, and this is how it hurts. When we're willing to look at the things that are not going well in our lives, the things that we're doing over and over and over again, expecting one result and we're getting a different result. When we're willing to look at how we have been degraded by society and systems and structures, and how maybe we're limited by things. When we're willing to look at what's going on with our bodies and chronic illness or whatever it is, that in that process of actually allowing ourselves to be upset about what we're upset about, in that process of allowing ourselves to actually validate what we're feeling and what we're experiencing and what we're going through and exactly what hurts, why does it hurt, what do we need, what do we want instead, what do we wish was different, we are going to be able to first start to process where we are projecting onto reality that this is how it should be versus this is how it is. And that is actually an incredibly difficult thing to do, but is one of the most liberating things we will ever do for ourselves. When we really let ourselves assess, this is what I think should be happening, this is what I think should be occurring, this is what I want reality to be, and this is what I'm expecting, versus what's actually occurring in reality, we are usually going to be upset about that contrast. We are usually going to be upset that life is not going how we want it to go, how we think it should go. And we're going to go through a period of realizing that what we believed about ourselves and what we believed about the world and what we believed should be based on what we're doing or what we're saying or just what we've been taught about the world isn't. And that is going to make us feel destabilized, and that's going to make us feel confused, and that's going to make us feel like we have no hope and we can't make anything better because it doesn't make any sense. Life isn't going how we think it should be, right? Like a lot of us really just want to hold on to, no, like I have reality figured out. I know how it should be. I know what should be happening, and I'm just going to keep doing my thing and keep living my life and keep doing these patterns over and over and over again, expecting reality to change at some point to match my expectation, because we feel like that's our power, right? Because we feel like if we were to admit, okay, the thing that I'm doing and the thing that I'm believing about reality and what I've been told about reality and what I've been told about what should lead to what outcomes and what I've been taught about, like from society, about this is how you should be and this is what you should do, and if you do all of these things and if you say all of these things and if you all of this should be your outcome. And when we admit that, like, that's not my outcome, that's not what I'm getting, life is not giving me the thing that I'm expecting, we're gonna, like I say, go through a period of existential crisis of like, oh my God, well, if I'm wrong about how things are, if I'm not seeing things correctly, then I'm lost and I'm trapped in this pain forever. But on the other side of that, if we let ourselves go through that, if we let ourselves go through that scary, dark, oh my God, I don't know what's going on, oh my God, I don't have the answers, I don't know how to make it better, I'm just in pain and I don't know how to get out of it. If we let ourselves go through that, we will start to see reality for how it actually is. And then we will start to be able to make better adjustments to what we're doing and what we're seeing and what we're feeling and what we're expecting to match reality for how it actually is versus the fantasy that we wish that it was or that what we were taught it should be. So that's the first thing, is when we allow ourselves to address our negative emotions and to address what's hurting us, we are going to usually go through a period of feeling lost and feeling confused and feeling like what we thought was reality and what we thought is how things should be isn't. And that we then have to relearn how reality actually is. We then have to relearn what is actually happening. And that can be a scary process, okay? And then the second thing is, almost always in my own life, when I have been hurt and upset and degraded by something, chronic illness, caregivers that didn't know how to support me, relationships that were terrible, things that I was doing over and over and over again in my life that were what I was taught to do, all of this stuff. When I allowed myself, again, to be upset by what was hurting me, when I allowed myself to be upset at the people who were hurting me, when I stopped trying to give everyone the benefit of the doubt, when I stopped trying to look for the silver lining, when I stopped trying to figure out how everything was helping me and everything was awesome, I realized again that a lot of the reason that I was doing that was because I was trying to give myself positive feelings within something that was negative that I didn't know how to do any other way, that I didn't feel like I had any control over, that I didn't feel like I could change. And that's another big thing that we have to usually witness in ourselves and understand in ourselves is that so much of what we struggle with and so much of what we deal with in life, not everything, okay? Not everything, not all the time. We are not perfectly in control of our lives, and I really want to make that clear, that not everything is something we can control, not everything is something we can change, not everything is something we can shift our perspective and then we will have answers for. However, a lot of the time, when we allow ourselves to be upset about the things that are hurting us, about the things that are harming us, and we really give ourselves space to just not try to forgive right now, to not try to find the silver lining, to not try and figure out how everything is working out in our favor. And like I say, to just really let ourselves feel and experience and process what's hurting, why it's hurting, and how it's hurting. First thing that we're really going to actually do for ourselves is jailbreak ourselves from this idea that this is what is normal, this is the only way things can be, and you need to figure out a way of making this good. Okay? Because so many of us, again, like in our relationship patterns, in our patterns with our bodies, in our patterns with our work, in our patterns with religion, in our patterns with whatever it is that we have our patterns around, we don't actually see that there is another way of being that could be better than the one that we're living in, because all of us live in these fishbowl echo chambers of life because we're wired to look for consistency in patterns. And something we kind of have to understand about our own psychology is that in order to make life livable, in order to make life something that we can reasonably manage, we cannot be taking in all of the information and all of the options and all of the different ways that anything could be at any given time at once. Otherwise, we'd explode. We'd never be able to make a decision. We'd never be able to find any kind of way of life if we were continually inundated with all of the choices that we have of ways of being and ways of looking at things and ways of considering things that are actually available at all times. Right? Like literally on this planet right now, there are X billion number of people, and every single person is living life a little bit differently. Every single person is living life in a unique way. Like there are so many ways of living, and this is something about, you know, if we have the opportunity in life to travel or to go to a different country or to go to to interact with people who are in different religions than us or different, just any kind of different culture or a different way of life, we can be like, whoa, like they are literally having an experience of life that is so different from mine. And they have a perspective of life that is so different from mine. And they have a way of being that is so different from mine. And yet it's still working to a degree, you know? Like a lot of us, we kind of have to realize and recognize that to find security and stability and a feeling of safety, it is in our human nature to believe that our way of being is right, and that our way of being is the best way, and that our way of being is the most just way, and it's the most correct way, and it's going to give us the best results. And in that, a lot of the time, we get a doctrine and we get a teaching that other groups of people and that other ways of life are wrong and bad and sinful and dangerous and can lead to horrible things. And we kind of don't realize that we're being indoctrinated by our caregivers, by our culture, by our economy, by our government, by our education systems, by our religions, and that in that indoctrination, we are being given a gift and a curse at the same time. We're being given a set of rules and a set of guidelines and a set of, we're being given a way of life so that we're not constantly in a state of confusion. Because again, remember how many decisions we have to make in a day. Remember how much work it is to just figure out how you're gonna navigate your reality. Because again, being alive is complicated. Being an adult is complicated. Having an adult life and managing an adult life, managing a body, managing relationships, managing how you're going to make money, managing how you're going to keep a roof over your head and get food on the table and have friends and find your purpose and all of these things. This is a lot. It is a lot. And so when we don't have like a blueprint, when we don't have like at least a base, like here are my values, here are the morals, here are the fundamental ways and structures that things should be, we would be completely overwhelmed and not able to make a decision and not able to move forward in our lives in any way. And so what we're raised in, the culture we're raised in, the family we're raised in, the religions, the education system, all of these things are indoctrinating us into a blueprint for the way to live life that give us a container, a framework to help us navigate all the millions of choices we have to make on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, and at trying to have our life be some sort of semblance of good and feeling good, which is really what we're looking for, right? And that can be a very good thing, like I say, because if we didn't have that, if we didn't have any kind of structure, if we didn't have any kind of foundation for like, here's just how I'm gonna loosely navigate, manage my life, here are my values and what I think is important and the just kind of defaults I'm gonna set in place for my day-to-day life, if we didn't have that, like I say, we'd be immobilized. We wouldn't be able to do anything because life is so complex and there are so many different ways of doing things that we'd never be able to choose. So it helps us in that way. But it harms us in the sense that when we get locked into this idea that the way that we live and the way that we perceive things and the way that we value things and the way that we prioritize things is the only way, is the right way, is the good way, and is the only way that we can do things. So a lot of us, we don't necessarily believe that our way of being and our way of doing things is the only way. We are aware that there are other ways. But the thing that stops us up is that we believe that our way that we've been taught, our way that we've been indoctrinated is the only right way, is the only good way. And I mean, but I will say too that, you know, a lot of the time, like especially in relationship dynamics, a lot of us really do think that the way that we're doing things and the way that we interact with people and the way that is the way we have to do it. Like how many times have you looked at a painful relationship dynamic or something in your body or something in your work or something in your life and thought, yeah, but there's no other option. This is what I have to do. I have to do this for this person. I have to be this for this person. I have to let them do this. I have to stay in this relationship. I have to do this job. I have to do this diet. I have to do, because if I don't, something terrible is going to happen, right? We all have many things like that, usually, that are, this thing sucks and I hate it and I don't like it and it doesn't feel good and it's hurting me. But it feels like I have to do it, otherwise something worse is going to happen. It feels like I have to do it, otherwise my life is going to fall apart, or I'm going to hurt other people, or I'm going to become a bad person, or whatever it is for us. And this is where I'm saying the letting ourselves go dark and the letting ourselves be upset is where we are going to expand our perception and expand our awareness and expand what we understand about ourselves and about reality, about other people, that will enable us to do something different that actually leads to better results, that actually leads to less pain, that actually leads to transcendence, and I'm putting that in quotes, in the sense of we can actually change patterns and loops of pain into something better. But we often are not going to be able to see the other option, what we can do instead, what actually is available, and we're not going to be willing to take the uncomfortable steps that are going to be required for us to break the patterns that we're currently in. Because again, we're almost never, just breaking a pattern that only affects us. Almost always, we're breaking patterns that are going to upset the people around us, that's going to upset the balance of our life in general. And that is a very uncomfortable thing to do, and beyond being uncomfortable, it can feel life-threatening. It can feel like we are going to lose everything we need to survive. It can feel like we are going to lose everyone who loves us. It can feel like we are not going to be okay if we change any of the things we're doing, which is why we're stuck in that I have to do this. This is the only way. If I don't do this, some horrible outcome is going to happen. So you see what I'm saying here? That we all sometimes have an idea that there might be something else that we could do, or an idea that there are other options, but we're so indoctrinated and convinced that if we were to change, if we were to do anything different, it would be worse than what we're doing right now. That we feel trapped in what we're doing, and like what we're doing right now is the only thing. And this is why I think that so many of us, like I say, stay stuck in stuff that is painful, that is harmful. And, you know, I talk on this channel a lot about how society is painful and harmful, and that what is considered normal in relationships, and what is considered normal in our economy, and what is considered normal in how we treat people, what is considered normal in terms of who and who isn't valuable, and what work isn't valuable, and our systems and our structures. I talk a lot about how that stuff is fundamentally painful, and that stuff is fundamentally set up to harm large groups of people in order to benefit a small group of people. And I talk about how we need to start to recognize these patterns and see these things for how they are, so that we can demand real change. And this is what I mean by that. This is what I mean when I talk about we have to let ourselves be upset about the way that things are, because it is in being upset about the things that are hurting us that we're going to unindoctrinate ourselves around what is normal and how things have to be and how things should be. Because this is, to me, what I think negative emotions are really helpful for us for. Negative emotions and our pain, pleasure feelings cannot lie to us about what is and isn't helpful and what is and isn't harmful. The intellect can be convinced of anything. Our minds can be handed as much evidence as we need to convince ourselves that something is real and something is true and something is how it should be. This is why all of us, including myself, live to lesser and greater degrees, believing that reality should go one way, when over and 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 over again, it goes another way. This is why we can do the same things over and over and over and over and over again and expect different results. Because our intellects have been thoroughly convinced that this is how reality is, this is what should happen. And even though our actual physical experience of what we're doing and what we're saying and our patterns is the opposite or is different than what we think should happen, even though our experience, our feelings are showing us this is not the outcome, this is not what actually happens, your mind is absolutely convinced this is how it should be, and yet it never is that. I saw this meme once of a person on a hot day. It was like a little cartoon, a person on a hot day drinking a hot tea, and the person beside them was like, why are you drinking a hot drink on a hot day? And then it said, well, I heard that if you drink something hot on a hot day, it like signals to your body to cool you down, and it will actually make you cooler. And then the person asked, oh, okay, does that work? And the person goes, nope, not even once. And it's like, that's a perfect illustration of how most of humanity is living our lives. Is that we're like, well, I'm convinced that this is how this should be, and I'm convinced that this is how this should go, and that if I just keep doing this, I'm going to get this outcome. And if we really ask ourselves the question, okay, well, does it work? We will say almost never. Like literally never. Literally never has it worked. And like I say, I think this is part of my gift as whatever it is that, however I'm designed. I've never been able to pretend that something is working that isn't working. I've never been able to be like, okay, we all agree simultaneously in culture or in my family or in my religion or in my whatever it is that I'm in, that this is the way it should be, and that when we do this, this is the outcome, and this is how it should be. I've always been the person that's like, okay, but that's not what's actually happening, right? Like, I hear what everyone's saying, and I understand the theory, and that's all great, but like, here's what's actually happening. Here's the reality. And it hurts, and it sucks, and this isn't good. Like, this isn't working out. Like, this is not... You're all doing this with the intention of getting these outcomes, because again, we have to remember, we all do something, we have patterns, we have habits, because we're convinced that we're going to get something we want. We're convinced that our way of relating to other people, our way of working, our way of eating, our way of living, our way of being moral, our way of politics, government, all of these things, we're convinced that if we do these things enough, we're going to get an intended positive outcome. That's why we're doing it. We think we're going to procure pleasure or we're going to escape pain. And I've always been the kind of person that's like, okay, but can we see that what we're doing isn't giving us that outcome? We're not procuring pleasure and we're not escaping pain. We're in pain. This thing sucks. This doesn't work. And oftentimes that would mean that I got attacked and that people would think it's not working because of you, because you keep saying it and you're negative and you just need to get on board and you're ruining the illusion that all this is working. Because again, I know that I understand that for periods of time we can make it look like what is happening is working, and we can make it look like things are going a certain way when they aren't. But the reality was that it's like, okay, but if it was working, I wouldn't be able to point out how it wasn't working. If it was really working, there would be nothing in reality for me to point to say, well, here's how that's not true, because that thing wouldn't exist. I'm not making that exist. I'm just observing the thing that exists. And so that's that. But our negative emotions and our feelings of pain are there to contradict our minds that have been convinced that something that is not true is true. That is what our negative emotions do. That is what our negative feelings do. That is what our positive feelings do, right? Our positive feelings that tell us to go towards something we've been told is bad. Our positive outcomes that tell us this way of being and this way of doing things actually works better than the way that I was indoctrinated. It works both ways. They show us what reality is. So, bringing it back, I'm going to give you a practical example. In my relationship with my caregivers, there was a lot of pain, and there was a lot of immaturity, and there was a lot of, it was just not good. And for a very, very, very long time, I was told over and over and over again by the spiritual community, by the self-help world, by all of these people. And this like over and over again, I was told, you need to forgive, you need to rise above it, you need to just see how she's innocent and they're innocent, and you need to make it work, was the constant drumbeat. If you're really spiritual, if you're really mature, if you're really good, if you're really actually all these things that you're trying to be in the spiritual world, you will rise above the pain, you will stop identifying with it, you will stop being in this negative spiral, and you will stop being hurt, and you will figure out, and there was this constant kind of understanding that, like, when you really get it, when you really transcend, when you are really spiritual, they will be able to do whatever they're doing, they will be able to act however they're acting, and it won't hurt you, and it won't harm you, and it won't affect you, and you will be able to just love them and see them for the light that they are, and that will be that. And I was told that over and over and over again. And I was told, if you're letting yourself be upset about it, if you're blaming them, you're giving your power away, you're negative, you're not spiritual, you're not mature, and you're just in your ego and all of this stuff. And for a long time, I was like, no, like, I don't really think that that's true. Like, it just, like, no matter how much I try to see the benefit, and this was the thing too, it's like, I did not struggle to see my caregivers as good. I did not struggle to see how everything was my fault. I did not struggle with believing that I was the cause, that they were treating me terribly because I did something stupid and I did something bad and I was too much and all of these things. And I did not struggle with seeing that my caregivers' history was really awful and that their upbringing was terrible and that it wasn't their fault that they were this way and all of that stuff. I did not struggle with that. I was way on that side of the spectrum of giving everyone the benefit of the doubt. I let everyone walk all over me. I let everyone I was the biggest doormat. I was one of the biggest doormats I've ever met. And codependent, people pleasing, all of this stuff. So this advice of just see them in their light and just see how good they are or whatever, it wasn't really even advice that I needed because I was already doing that. That was my coping mechanism. Of just see them at their light, see how it's your fault, change your own behavior, change my behavior so that I won't, to try to not set them off and trigger them and all these things, while at the same time never being able to really do that. And it got to the point where I was like, you know what? No. Like, at some point, this person, these people in my life, and it wasn't just my caregivers, it was different people. I had to get to a place where I was like, I'm an adult and they're an adult. I'm no longer in a child position where I have to be in relationship with anybody, right? I got to a point of realizing that in my adulthood, I was not dependent on anyone or anything the way that I had been when I was a child. I was not trapped in these things. And part of this, again, was learning to see myself as capable and learning to see myself as valid and not just there to serve other people and not just there to make other people happy and not just there to continue on these patterns so that no one has to be upset, not just there, like I say, to help others. And it was a thing in me, but overall, like I said, I just got to a place where I was like, bottom line, this is painful. This is painful every time. It's painful no matter what I do. I can't change myself. And I got myself to this place where I could see it like a metaphor, right? Like, if I'm continually, every single time I'm in this person's presence, they put their cigarette out on my leg. Like, they take their cigarette and they put it out on my leg. I get burned every time. And it doesn't matter how much I try and move my leg. It doesn't matter how much I try to communicate with them not to do that. I've tried every which way to be able to be in their presence and have them not do what they're going to do. And at the end of the day, they are not capable of not doing that. Right? Like, I came to this understanding that, like, it wasn't going to matter. That the person was going to put their cigarette out on my leg every single time I was in their presence. And I got to a point where I was like, I have to, number one, stop denying that hurts me and that I then have to recover every single time I do that. Whereas if I wasn't spending time with them, I would not then have to spend time recovering from the damage that was done. So that's the first thing. When we allow ourselves to acknowledge our negative emotions, we are finally going to allow ourselves to acknowledge that we're being degraded and that we're being hurt and that things are degrading and hurting us that are actually degrading and hurting us. Because there is absolutely no amount of spiritual workarounds that negate being degraded by something. And I feel like, again, in the spirituality world, in the self-help world, especially in the spirituality world, we literally want to believe that if we get our minds right, nothing can hurt us. We really seem to live in this place where we believe, like, this toxic positivity, I believe, comes from a bottom line mindset that if we get our minds right, reality doesn't exist. Like literally, that's essentially what people are saying. If we think correctly, if we are transcended in our minds enough, quote unquote, if we have the right perspective, nothing in reality can hurt us. No one can hurt us. Nothing can hurt us. Everything how it is already is perfect. And that is delusion. That is not spirituality. If your spiritual teachers are trying to teach you that you can change your perspective enough that everything in reality, however it is right now, is perfect and not painful and not harmful, ever, that everything is perfectly how it should be, and that you can be in any place, in any situation, in any relationship, in any whatever, and it will be good for you, that is delusion, that is not spirituality. But that is really what's at the root so much of the time of this toxic positivity of you need to just find the benefit in everything. It's because we feel ultimately like we don't have control to actually make things better. Or we feel like if we admit that something is degrading us, that's when it starts to degrade us. That's another big thing that I've struggled with my whole life, of calling something out for the harm that it is causing is not the thing causing the harm. And our people on our planet who are not able to see what they're not able to see, and when we come as people who can see things and we say, this is harmful, this is causing this is causing this pain, people often didn't see that before you said it, and then they automatically think you caused it by saying it. You made it negative by talking about it. You made it bad by talking about it. And if you would just stop talking about it and stop acknowledging it and have a positive attitude, it would go back to being fine. When in reality, it wasn't fine. If I can point to something and say, here's the harm being caused by this, I didn't create that with my words when I just said it. That's not what made the harm happen. I'm pointing out a thing that was occurring already. Right? And so again, our negative emotions and our negative feelings and the things that hurt, when we just go base, this is hurting. That's letting us know that what we think reality should be is different than how reality actually is. And it lets us know that degradation is happening. And again, sometimes that means the way that we're perceiving things is incorrect. And that's what's causing us pain. It's not the actual thing. So again, I'm not saying always and never. But I'm saying when your spiritual teachings are saying always and never, when they are saying you can always shift your mindset to get to a place where whatever you're going through is okay and perfect because reality is always okay and perfect, that is delusion. In real reality, in real spirituality, in my opinion, when we acknowledge our pain, when we acknowledge what hurts, when we acknowledge the things that are not working, when we acknowledge the degradation we are experiencing. So again, I noticed every single time I interacted with some of these people, I got hurt and I had to then recover. And I thought to myself, what if I didn't interact with these people and therefore didn't have to then spend the time recovering? What if I just stopped putting myself in harm's way? How much more time and energy and resources would I have left over at the end of the day to do things that I actually want to do things that are actually helpful? If I'm not spending my time having to recover from the obvious degradation that happens every single time this person puts their cigarette out on my leg. If I didn't have to keep healing, could I move forward in a more positive way in my life? And like I say, sometimes acknowledging what hurts, acknowledging our negative emotions, acknowledging the pain that we're actually in and the suffering we're going through means we have to admit to ourselves that our set of normal is fundamentally painful, is fundamentally harmful. And that means we need to find something different. That means we need to find something better. And it wasn't us acknowledging our negative emotion, and it wasn't us acknowledging the pain that made the pain. It wasn't us acknowledging the degradation that caused the degradation. And in fact, the more we acknowledge it, the more we can start to understand. Because here's the next thing. For so many of us, we're in, like I said, these indoctrinated ways of being in our relationships, in our bodies, in our jobs, in our culture, that we don't know what to even question. Because we can't tell what's good and bad, what's right and wrong, what's causing harm and what's not. Because we're all in our heads around, this is how things should be, this is what I've been told, these are the patterns that have been shown to me for my whole life, this is what everyone else around me does, this is what everyone else around me expects. These are the rules for what I was told was good and right and makes me pure and holy and acceptable. We don't see the stuff we're swimming in that's fundamentally harmful because it's normal to us. And in fact, we've been shamed and blamed and guilted for not wanting to do it, for struggling within it, right? So much, I believe, about why people are coping and numbing and self-sabotaging and addicted and having all these horrible patterns, quote unquote horrible patterns, is because they're trying to manage the pain of being in a culture that's shitty. We're trained to blame ourselves. We're trained to see ourselves as weak and as wrong and as bad if we can't do normal. Instead of saying, if it hurts, maybe it's because normal doesn't work. Maybe it's because what we've been told is right and how we should be isn't correct, in the sense that it's not actually good for us. It's not good for society. It's good for a certain number of people. Maybe the reason everything hurts is not because we suck and we're addicted and we're weak and we're lazy and we're all these things, but it's because normal way of life is shitty. And this again is the power of acknowledging our negative emotions, of not looking for the bright side, of not looking for how all this is helping me, of not looking for how this is helping me get stronger or whatever. When we look for the degradation, when we look for how this is messing with me, in our personal relationships, in our diets, in our self-help, in our personal growth, in our spirituality, when we look at it and we say, is this objectively making me stronger? Is this objectively helping me get better? Or is this degrading me and constantly forcing me to try to recover from a shitty thing? And when we find I'm having to constantly recover from a shitty thing, we need to at some point acknowledge and validate that that way of being isn't working. And that is the gift. That is the gift of letting ourselves go dark. That is the gift of letting ourselves go dark. We need to acknowledge what is just degrading so that we then will figure out how to have the power to change it. Because like I said, spirituality that teaches you to just learn how to be okay in anything is delusion. Spirituality that helps you learn to connect with what hurts, to process through your emotions, to get embodied, and to then unite the heaven and the earth, which tells us this thing I'm doing on the planet is causing me pain. This thing that's happening in reality hurts and sucks and isn't good for me and isn't good for anyone. We can then have the broader perspective and say, okay, well, why is this wrong? Society has told me that it's right. Culture has told me that it's right. Family has told me that it's right. Everyone's telling me this is how it should be. But it hurts. So what's actually going on? That's spiritual liberation. When we can say, this thing that everyone else is doing, this thing that everyone else is saying is normal, this thing that everyone else is saying, this is how we do relationships, this is how we do our diet, this is how we do life. And you just need to learn to get along. You just need to try harder. You just need to do better. You need to become more spiritually enlightened, quote unquote, by seeing how this is all good. The true spirituality, in my opinion, is to go, no, that's causing pain. That's causing degradation. Putting myself in a position to be degraded over and over and over again so that I can then recover from it and try and find some spiritual lesson in it is not spirituality. That's stupid. And I don't mean that. I don't mean that's stupid because, again, we all do it because we're not taught how to find something different. And, again, we have all this biology and evolutionary biology and conditioning that says if you do something different, you're going to be cast out from the group and then you'll die. If you're going to be rejected, you're going to be misunderstood, you're going to be weird, and people aren't going to like you. And I can guarantee you, yes, all of that stuff is going to happen. You're going to be weird, and people aren't going to like you, and you're going to get rejected, and it will be okay. In a lot of ways, it'll be okay. Again, I'm not saying everyone just go off on your own and reject everybody, and what I am saying is, as we slowly allow ourselves to acknowledge what hurts, we're going to then be able to help ourselves shift our perspective that we've been indoctrinated into our entire lives around what is and isn't normal and is and isn't okay. That's how we're going to be able to see the changes we can make to make things actually better, instead of constantly trying to make ourselves okay in a thing we're not okay with. If you are constantly in pain, it is not your fault. You are not broken. There's not something wrong with you. If you're constantly finding yourself being upset about something and resentful and hurt by someone's behavior and hurt over and over again, no matter how much you try and spiritualize what you're going through, you're hurt over and over and over again, it's not because you're spiritually unenlightened. It's not because you're not being positive enough. It's not that. It's because there's something that's happening that's hurting you. So again, it's either your perception of something is incorrect or the thing itself, the actual thing itself, is harmful and hurting you. And either way, the way to figure out if it's a perception issue, if it's this thing that we're doing is actually harmful and degrading, and then figuring out what we can do instead, or figuring out the different perspective, it doesn't matter. The answer is to acknowledge and validate and process through your negative emotion. To process through the pain. Why does this hurt? Where does it hurt? How does that hurt? What's the story behind this? What do I think is going to happen if I do something different? We process through why whatever we're going through is hurting us. And we give ourselves permission to admit that we're being hurt, to admit that this thing doesn't feel good, and to say what about it doesn't feel good, and to give ourselves the room to explore that, to actually say what doesn't feel good about this. And this is why I'm saying the fundamental keys of all of this is compassion and curiosity for yourself. Because again, for almost all of us, we've learned to blame ourselves and shame ourselves and figure out how our pain is our fault and because of us, because we're not doing things right and we're not seeing things right, and it's all shame and blame and guilt, because that's the power we had as children. And we need to learn how to give ourselves the benefit of the doubt. That's where that compassion piece comes in. I'm feeling pain for a reason, and it's not because I suck. This hurts for a reason, and it's not because I'm just shitty. Even if my perception is wrong, even if there's things that I'm doing that are causing pain, it's not because I'm shitty, and it's not because I'm terrible, and it's not because I'm stupid. It's because I didn't know. I'm doing the best that I can with what I have. And I need to learn something new. I need to see something in a new way. And when we allow ourselves to do that, that's when we're going to see the normal that isn't helpful. That's when we're going to see the new way of doing things that we've never seen before. That's when we're going to have the bravery to step into doing something different, changing our way of being, not doing the same things over and over again, challenging the status quo. Because we've validated ourselves and been on our own side enough. We've done that internal practice of this hurts for a reason and it's not because I'm shitty and I'm failing. We've practiced that inner compassion and that inner curiosity so that when it comes time to seeing, okay, well, this is what I think is actually happening. These are the patterns that I want to break. These are the things I want to change. We have the capacity to do that. And finding something that actually works instead of continually trying to make the thing that's normal work that doesn't work is the gift of letting ourselves go dark. When we're constantly trying to make something that hurts okay, we're trapping ourselves in pain. This is what everyone thinks. It's the opposite of what everyone else thinks. Everyone thinks if I acknowledge the pain and if I look at it and if I admit it, then I'm going to be stuck in it forever. I have to keep looking for the positive and keep looking for the benefit and keep looking for how it's good and keep looking for the good thing, and that's how I'm going to be happy. No. If something is shitty and you refuse to acknowledge it and then you refuse to change how you're doing things, you will be stuck in pain forever. If you're willing to look at the pain, if you're willing to acknowledge what isn't working, if you're willing to say, this hurts, why does it hurt? What is hurting? What needs to shift? That's when you actually will find freedom, because you will figure out a way of fixing the thing that is actually broken. It's not you. Do you see what I'm saying? By denying the things that cause us pain and trying to figure out how it's good, that's how we trap ourselves in a thing that causes pain over and over and over again. Like I said, this person was never going to stop putting their cigarette out on my leg. So my two options were, stay in this relationship how it is, and then I'm constantly going to get the cigarette put out on my leg. There isn't going to come a time when this person changes and stops putting their cigarette out on my leg. I accepted that reality. Every single time I put my hand on a burner, I get burned. So, do I want to keep trying to figure out how putting my hand on a burner is a blessing? Do I want to keep trying to figure out how this pain is helping me? Do I want to keep recovering from this pain? Or do I want to say, okay, well, what can I do different? Is there something I can do to make it so that I don't keep putting my hand on the burner? Is there something that I can do to change my behavior so that this person doesn't have the opportunity to put their cigarette out on my leg? We look at the things we have control over, because again, we don't always have complete control over the things that cause us pain. We're not always going to be able to separate ourselves from the person that's harming us. We're not always going to be able to leave the job. We can't just leave society. We don't have perfect control over all of our pain. But we have more control than we think that we do a lot of the time. And in continually trying to change ourselves versus acknowledging what's painful and then figuring out how to navigate a new way of working within it to make that pain less if we can't change what the pain actually is, that is how we help ourselves. We are not doing ourselves any favors by trying to find a benefit in a thing that is hurting us that we can change. We have to acknowledge our pain and why we are hurt. And then, like I say, if we find out that the thing that's causing us pain is something we don't have control over, that's when we can go into, okay, but what can I do within it to support myself better? If I'm acknowledging how it actually is instead of expecting this to be a way that it isn't. If I'm acknowledging the degradation that happens in this relationship, how can I better support myself knowing that that degradation is going to take place? Because that's still more empowered than continually just believing this relationship is good or continually trying to find the benefit in it when we're denying the degradation that's happening. We don't do ourselves any favors by denying our pain. We do not do ourselves any favors by denying our pain and denying what's hurting us. When we can fully acknowledge it and we can fully look at it and we can fully realize it, that's when we can either, like I say, go into problem-solving mode to actually change what can happen, or better support ourselves within what we cannot change. But just trying to be positive about things that are not positive doesn't make a positive life. Then, and again, here's the last thing that I'll say. When we have allowed ourselves to go dark, when we have validated our emotions, when we've really given ourselves time to process and have a catharsis about something that's hurting us, to be upset about chronic illness that we can't change, to be upset about the way that our caregivers abused us, to all of these things, and we've taken some empowered action to make things better for ourselves in the ways that we can, on the other side of that, then we're probably going to see, okay, and then I can see the benefit. I can see that this made me a stronger person. I can see that this was good for me in these ways. I can see that I was developed in this way because of this. And that's going to happen naturally. You won't have to search for that. You will be able to see that the challenges of your life or whatever, when you're more safe inside, when you're more regulated inside, when you're more feeling like you're on your own side and you have some sort of safety with yourself, and when you have some sort of feeling of either, like I say, capacity to change the things that are hurting you, or at least capacity to make things better for yourself and what you cannot change, you're naturally going to look for the silver lining. You're naturally going to look for how this is helping you. You're naturally going to see that you don't have to force that. And I'm saying that from experience. You'll want to. Because this is your life, and you're going to want to live your life to the best that you possibly can. So this letting ourselves acknowledge what's hurting, letting ourselves acknowledge what's painful, letting ourselves acknowledge what isn't working is a step on the path of empowerment. It is not disempowering. It is disempowering to deny reality. It is disempowering to pretend that something that is hurtful isn't hurtful. It's disempowering, and again, it allows the systems that are shitty to keep going the longer we keep trying to make what is shitty okay. We have to see through this. This you need to just learn how to be okay in whatever is shitty indoctrination to accept shitty things. That is not spirituality. We want to look for where we can make shitty things better by acknowledging what's shitty about them. The only way we're going to make something better is by acknowledging what isn't working, so that we can build something that will work better. Denial is never going to make things better. Reality is not inherently perfect. Society is not inherently perfect. Our relationships are not inherently perfect. What we were handed as this is how you live life is not inherently perfect. If you're in pain for a reason. Look for why. Validate yourself. Look for where the changes you can make are, and then look for how you can support yourself in what you cannot change. That is actual empowerment. And then, like I say, finding the silver lining, finding how this was good, finding how all of this made life better for you. That will happen naturally as you do this work. You won't have to force it. Get on your own side. Assume you are in pain for a reason. Give yourself the benefit of the doubt. Explore it. Look for where you really do need things to change. And then go with how reality actually is. Admit how reality actually is. And then what do we want to do with it? That's how we find our power. We do not find our power in saying, no, I'm just going to believe that reality is how I want it to be. It isn't. How is it actually? And then what do we want to do with that? That's empowerment. How is reality actually? And then what do we want to do with that reality? That is empowerment. Denying reality and trying to make it good when it isn't is not empowerment. That is denial. That is delusion. Those are two different things. Being positive in saying, I can take this reality for how it is and try to see how we can make it better. Try to see what good we can get out of what we can't change. Try to see the benefit in what is actually beneficial and build on that. That is spiritual empowerment. Denying reality will never be empowerment. That's not spirituality. Letting yourself go dark, letting yourself feel what you actually feel, process your emotions, is how you will find the power you have. Okay? Don't let anyone shame you into saying you're not being spiritual if you're not being positive. Positivity is, I'm going to accept reality for how it actually is, and then look for how I can make it as good as it can possibly be. That's positivity. I'm going to accept reality for how it actually is and then look for how I can make it as good as it can possibly be. Not, I'm going to try and just assume that everything is good and figure out how to change myself in my mind to be okay with it. That's not spirituality. That's not positivity. That's continuing to let someone put their cigarette on your leg and expecting that one day you don't get burned. You're going to keep getting burned, so what are you going to do about it? Do you see? Okay. I hope that was helpful. I hope that made sense. And I get it. People are afraid of negative emotions. We're afraid of being negative. We're afraid of admitting the things that are hurtful because we don't automatically know how to fix it and change it. We're afraid that if we admit to what's not working, we're going to get stuck in it forever. We're afraid that if we admit to what reality actually is, that's how we're in pain, and if we don't stay positive, that we'll never find the answer. But that's not reality. It's the exact opposite of the reality. When we acknowledge how reality actually is, that's when we can find solutions. That's when we can find what actually is empowering. That's when we can find what is actually good. Pretending that things are good when they're not is not spirituality. That's keeping us trapped in something that is shitty. Okay? Okay. So that's that. I love you. Have a great week. There's nothing wrong with you. You are valid in what you're feeling. Even if it's a misperception on your part and reality isn't broken, you still need to validate those feelings. They are showing you where your perception is incorrect. And if that's true, you will be able to actually feel good and not convince yourself to feel good. You will be able to actually feel good in seeing what actually is. Okay? It's not about convincing yourself that something is good that it isn't. It's about looking for what actually is. Okay. And when what actually is genuinely painful, it's about supporting yourself in that. It's not about trying to pretend that that is fine. Even if it lasts for a while, yes. If what isn't fine, how can you support yourself within it? What do you need within it? That's empowerment. Okay? Okay. Mwah. Have a great week. I'll see you next week.